Hello, everyone, and welcome to our virtual CANNAtalk session. First, I'd like to thank Canna for organizing this event. Over the years, Canna has always been a leader in educating, supporting, and developing our industry, and I'm pleased to be able to facilitate this panel and other sessions as part of their CANNAtalk program. For this discussion, we will be diving into how to brand, market, and sell your product in the domestic and potentially international markets, and we're very fortunate to be joined by leading industry experts today. And we will explore these topics and hopefully touch on some future considerations. First, I just want to highlight a few housekeeping items. Please note everybody else besides the panelists will be muted. So we do want to have an interactive session and would appreciate some questions from the audience. So there's multiple ways of doing it. If you're watching on the Canna website, you should see a QA box just below the screen where you can punch in your questions. We also have a poll running, and we'd appreciate people to respond to the poll. This will help us create some new topics and ideas for the future talks. And also, otherwise, if you're watching this in full screen mode and you don't want to scroll around on your screen, you can use the QR code on the right-hand side with your mobile app and go from there. It'll be the same thing. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. First, we have Lisa Campbell, CEO of Mercari Agency. They are an experienced sales and marketing agency headquartered in Toronto. We have Janine Davis. She's a VP of Sales at Joint Venture Craft Cannabis, a licensed processing and co-packing facility located in BC. And last but not least, Stéphane McDonald, CEO of Lot420. And Lot420 is a licensed cannabis producer based in Mansonville, Quebec. So hello all. Just wanted to add a quick note that if you're interested in getting some more details on our panelists, please visit the CANNAtalk invite for the full bios, and you can click on each panelist, get some information about what they do and their respective companies. So let's get right into it. I'd like to start with cultivation. So Stéphane, Lot420, you have a great reputation in the market. So what do you think sets your products apart from other producers?
Oh yeah, hey Nico, thanks for all the intros and everything. Um, so yeah, basically I'd put it on a couple things. You have to have good genetics to get going. That's probably something that's really important. Keep a program running and continuously bring in new things, or try to at least, or have them ready for product calls, and get those proper ones that are going to give you those good yields, but that are also going to be pleasing to the crowd. So there's some work to be done on that. You got to have some good genetics for sure. Branding is important. That's kind of something that's kept us out there. Like, you have to have a nice Instagram. Like, even before, if you're just getting started, like, I'd even work on having a brand beforehand. Get your Instagram going. Like, before we came out, we already had a couple thousand followers, on our page, and that was kind of done by design. So kind of try to build your own community that way, and then another important part is, like, just stay in touch with your followers in the community that you have built and the people that are there already, and, like, keep your ear to the streets and see what's going on and what people are looking for, what they need, and just be ahead of all that. So yeah, I guess a mix of those things kind of helps us tread the line.
Okay, great. You've touched on quite a few points, and specifically how to get your brand and how you started is really interesting. I'll get back to the brand because I kind of want to follow somewhat of a process in what we do in our chain, our supply chain. So we talked a little about the cultivation and things. So on to the packaging and distribution. So Janine, from a product perspective, what are some of the biggest mistake people make when they bring a new product to market?
Um, I guess biggest mistake would be one of the things is, like, a lot of people will do market research 6 months ago, 1 year ago, and they'll base their pricing or their format upon what was popular then. We're finding with this legal cannabis being such a new industry, and we're building the plane as we fly it, the market rapidly shifts with even a 90-day period. So make sure that you're doing recent research into formats and pricing, and really trying to enter the market competitively, because if you overprice your product for the quality, somebody might buy it once. I mean, Lisa, she's an amazing saleswoman. She can get anybody to buy your weed once, but buying it twice, it has to smoke good, and they have to feel like it's good value. So I'd say that is a mistake that a lot of people make, is they talked to somebody a year ago and they get really stuck on that. You can't get stuck on anything in this industry. It's shifting under the landscape, shifting under our feet constantly. Do recent research, and really, if you do hire a sales agency or you have somebody, like, use their advice, like really take their advice. They know what's moving, and sales velocity to me is greater than milking the highest price per gram.
Really, really interesting, and I'm looking forward to get to Lisa, because now she's getting primed up with a few of these answers. But just quickly, Janine, so on the flip side, how do companies stay relevant and keep that position on the shelf? So you mentioned, like, you can do the one-time big price, but you gotta stay there. So kind of just reiterate a little bit, what can we do if we do hit that right segment? How do we stay there, and how do we keep the clients coming? That's a big question.
The best way to keep people coming is consistency, and I think when you're cultivating, you're doing agriculture, and consistency can vary crop to crop. And the difficult thing in the legal cannabis landscape, I mostly work with legacy transition farmers, is wrapping your head around the fact that if you grew a pack of, say, quads of white truffle, you could sell it at a quad price in the legacy market. And the next time, if your crop got bugs or your AC went down in August and your crop's a dub, you sell it at a dub price. In the legal market, once you have a SKU registered, you kind of have to fill that SKU with whatever you produce. So do not put something into your SKU if your next crop hasn't hit or if your quality has declined. Make other plans for that lot. Wholesale it, do it into another brand, but to keep your brand and your name and to really build your reputation, the most important thing I've seen is consistency.
Wow, excellent. Protecting your brand is protecting your SKU. So really making sure you put the same thing in the bottle to appease, and not make the decision necessarily on a financial decision per se, because today might gain you that extra dollar, but over a long period of time, you're going to lose your traction. Yeah, excellent. Wow, really cool. So, Lisa, so now we're getting into the brand and the marketing. What are the most common hurdles you've seen people face when they're trying to get their product to market? So Janine mentioned a really good one is historical trends, but yeah, what's your take on this?
Well, there's a number of challenges getting your brand into the legal market. I think the biggest challenge is the provincial boards. Depending on what province you're in Canada, there's a different procurement process and also a different timeline for getting SKUs to market. In Ontario, as Janine mentioned, it's around 6 months from when you submit your product to when it launches in the market. So in 6 months, so many things can change. Pricing changes, strain changes in terms of what the trends are. Of course, strain fatigue is real. Versus out here, I'm currently in British Columbia, and it's absolutely heaven because we have direct delivery. We can get a product listed in 1 week. Just yesterday, we were doing a pop-up, and we were able to say that this product was harvested 3 weeks ago. That's what consumers want. They want freshness. They want rotating genetics. So unfortunately, not all provinces are equal in terms of being able to get your product to market in a quick way. Another challenge is, just dealing with the boards. You might want to do a price change on your product because things have changed in 6 months, but you might not be able to. So yeah, it's really challenging for craft producers to go from having, really, high quads cannabis like Lot420 to actually developing a brand. It's not enough to have a quad. You need to have a brand that resonates with consumers. Also, it's not enough to be a legacy brand. You can't take your popularity in the legacy market for granted in the legal market. You really have to put in the work. You have to visit the stores. You have to contact the buyers 4 to 6 weeks before your SKUs launch, let them know it's coming. You have to manage key accounts. So, the legal market has its challenges for sure, and a lot of growers are still adapting to that. I would say the last major challenge is return to vendor. That's something in Ontario in particular that a lot of craft producers are struggling with. Oftentimes, product isn't priced correctly, it doesn't move at the velocity expected. And with 120 days, your product can be returned to you, whether that's $20,000 of product or $200,000 in product. So, a lot of craft producers, especially who are priced more premium, are really struggling to see that velocity and sell through, and as a result, are getting returns. And if you get a six-figure return and you're a small company, that's enough to go into bankruptcy. So it's really, really challenging, and I think that's one of the biggest things we're dealing with in the legal market.
Wow. Many things said there, and there seems like a lot of hurdles. So mentioning, right price and the quality to be in that segment, consistency is part of that, and you mentioned the importance of having a good brand that follows that. And I think Stefan showed how they kind of did it. Do you have a few other points on how you can get your brand, like to support, I guess, your good quads and your good product? Yeah, like kind of
Yeah, I think
continuing on what Stefan said a little bit, like how do you build that? A few little tips for our listeners.
for sure. I think Instagram is huge, but it's always a challenge as well because, of course, cannabis is federally illegal in the United States. For Instagram has their company headquarters through Facebook. So I know my Instagram just got taken down personally, as did our BC Instagram. So, building an Instagram is awesome. It's a great way to engage in community, but it's also high risk in that if you post photos of your bud, which is what consumers want to see, you're going to get taken down. So that's a really big challenge, but social media is huge. I also think bud tender engagement is really huge. It's not enough to get the listing. Like Janine said, I can get the listing, but if you don't have sell through, then that store is not going to reorder your product. So it's really about A, getting the listing, B, educating the bud tenders, and C, making sure that when the consumer walks into that store, that store is properly merchandised so you can see your product. So a great example of that, we were doing the pop-up yesterday at AR Cannabis. I saw a whole wall of joint venture. I saw all of the product cards as well with beautiful bud shots. So you want to make sure that when the consumer walks into your store, they see your brand and that those bud tenders are educated on your brand and they know to ask for, or they know to recommend the product. So we're seeing a huge trend in, of course, pop-ups in store, which is really fun, giving away swag, engaging with consumers and also the bud tenders, as well as bud tender engagement. We're also seeing a huge amount of consumption events, kind of Spanibus style, very inspired by Barcelona's social clubs. So across the country, we're seeing a trend where people are renting private venues, and despite regulations against smoking inside, having huge smoke fests where they're allowing budtenders to try their product. I would say the last thing that's super important is samples. I can tell a buyer to purchase your product. I can show them beautiful photos. I can have, bud porn all over Instagram. But if they don't actually see your product in real life, they've been bamboozled or snickle fritzed a million times with beautiful shots, and then they actually get the product and it's not what the photo looked like. So it's really important for brands to have a sample budget. Samples just got legalized in Alberta. We've had legal samples in Ontario for quite some time. Saskatchewan's got samples going. So it's really important for the buyer to try your product before they buy it, because Unfortunately, in Canada, we have a huge surplus of cannabis in the market, and a lot of that is very aged. So we're seeing a lot of problems with dryness, cannabis that's like over a year old sitting in vaults. And, when that comes to market, the consumer is not necessarily pleased unless they're paying the appropriate price for that aged product. So lots of challenges there.
Wow, thank you. That's a great detailed answer for everyone. So Janine, there was a lot of talk about craft growers, smaller growers. There's a few mention of that throughout the answers from pretty much everybody. I really like what you guys are doing, what Joint Venture is doing in BC, helping the smaller craft grower, the legacy guys come into the industry. Fantastic. But from a supply chain perspective, do you find it easier? Is lot size a factor? Like when it comes to dealing, like, can we send you 10 kilograms or can we do 50 kilograms? Or is there a minimum maximum? How does that work? Because I get calls from various size operations and lot size are from every size, technically.
Okay, so my answer would change depending on the province that your SKU is registered in. Right? So, I mean, we're dealing in different markets. And then, a small lot that, we're focused on BC in particular, cultivators. That's pretty much all we do. So a small lot is great for BC. Rotating genetics, always coming out with what's new and fresh because we have paths to market for that. When we're dealing in larger provinces, a larger lot is definitely more desired. And larger provinces, essentially, it's not that you're punished for being small, but they're not quite sure what to do with you. Because, like, for example, one of the things that we ran into is there is great demand for the product from the small cultivators. So they might have only produced a 8 to 12 kilogram lot in Ontario, but the AI PO system, the OCS, that is so smart that it is frustrating, would spit out a 2100 case PO, and they could only have 800 cases of biomass to fill that. And then the processor's vendor rating then goes down because of unfulfilled purchase orders. So it really depends which province you're supplying. If I have a cultivator with a SKU registered in Ontario, in a general list SKU or a stock position SKU, I really want that to be a larger lot. I would say if you have 4 rooms, cultivate all the same genetic, we've got to fill these larger purchase orders. If I have a cultivator that's only selling in BC and they have 4 500 square foot flower rooms, I would say let's grow something different in each room, keep it new and exciting. So it really depends where your distribution is and what you're focused on. So the best thing to do is to sit down with your processor and come up with a plan. This is what I would like to do. What do you think about that? What would my paths to be to market, and what would the SKU registration look like? A lot of cultivators come into this and they have no understanding that we need to know the top 5 terpenes and quantities for a crop they haven't even harvested yet, just to do a SKU registration in Ontario, where we're not delivering the product for 6 months. So you have to really sit down with your processor and come up with a strategy and think about all the components to getting to market in each product, in each province, and what that looks like. So all of that comes into play.
Wow. So I was a little worried when you first started answering because I thought it was going to be a short-handed answer, but not at all, because it's quite complex. Okay, if we look at other kind of industries and production industries, do you, like, this is quite complex and you have to have a little bit of a control on this as JVC and right? So do you have supply agreements that you put in place to be able to assure that, nobody gets burnt and that we're all everybody's meeting what they're supposed to do? Yeah.
Well, I think this is agriculture. What am I going to do? Like, penalize somebody because they got bugs in week free? I can't bring that to market. I'm going to get penalized as a processor. So, it just is what it is. You just have to truly pick your partners, stay in close contact with them, and do your best to meet their needs. I cannot put a crop to market that doesn't meet spec, and I have had to cancel SKUs because of that. It's painful. They're hard to get. It's really competitive out there. But if you're putting something out to market that's premium priced, and then the crop they deliver to you is a dub, you're going to ruin your brand, you're going to ruin your name, and you're going to have a hard time selling that product through. So, we actually, I know a lot of brands have done like, oh, here's a supply agreement. We're going to buy everything you produce for $4 a gram or $3 a gram. But, lo and behold, too good to be true is too good to be true. And in the last 2 years, we've seen all those supply agreements get canceled.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well. Okay, so not really supply agreement, but the right partners to instill trust and bring consistency through that. Okay, oh, that's great.
And just stay in
Because it
contact
is
with your
difficult.
supplier.
Yeah, yeah, it's essentially is kind of supplier validation in a sense, right? So you put some confidence into the good suppliers that you want to work with.
Yeah.
So let's get back to, speaking of suppliers, let's get back to Stefan. What are some of the challenges that Lot420 overcame to hold this position that you have in the market? Like, so we talked about all the pitfalls. Like, have you guys done something different? How did you keep this position and stay ahead?
Yeah, no, you basically just have to deal with all those things. I mean, everything all the other panelists had mentioned is you're going to encounter. You know what I mean? That's 100%. You're going to have a crop that you might not want to bring to market, and you'll have to do something with it and deal with the lesser monies you'll get for that. Price compression's another thing I think we touched on a bit here, but that's a real thing, and you have to kind of see how you're going to deal with that as well. So yeah, also probably like, bringing new strains is a challenge as well. You might be ready, the provinces aren't ready yet. There are ways to do it in BC, but that's still, they have to accept your SKUs too. So, I mean, those are kind of the challenges, I guess, is price compression, getting new strains to market or bringing new things to market could be long, and you have to be able to maintain your cash flows otherwise, and you have to be able to just keep afloat other ways. You have to diversify. It has to be a lot of diversification in this market. Like, I wouldn't just like fall on one province. Try to get into all the provinces you can, the ones that people might overlook at some points. People might overlook a Manitoba or Saskatchewan, but that could give you some pretty good revenues on a monthly basis. So diversifying is important, and yeah, just maintaining consistency also, that's a challenge, but it's something you have to overcome. And you do that by learning, and you just have to have different outlets for different things, when things go wrong. So yeah, those are some of the challenges, I guess.
So, like, in short, not put all your eggs in the same basket. So how does this work for expanding now? So expanding to new markets is hopefully potentially new volumes, bigger volumes. So does that correlate 100% to expanding your actual physical footprint, facility, and growing more? Or is it just to mitigate the risk, like you said?
Yeah, probably a combination of both. I mean, I'm sure it depends what you want to do. Like, there's basically two different kind of games. There's a volume game, or there's a kind of quality game, put it that way. So you're either going to go for volumes, set yourself at a lower price point and try to make, smaller margins but push out a lot of product, or you're going to go in to like a little higher segment market and bring out a lot of different strains and a lot of different markets and diversify and try to go get, a higher dollar for what you're producing.
Mm-hmm.
So it just depends on what kind of model you're looking for. You can do a bit of both as well if you can do that, but smaller producers can't turn around that easy. Like, I'd love to have a value brand probably at some point, but it's something that takes time to put in place. All these things take a lot of effort, a lot of marketing, a lot of, money involved. So you just go step by step. You carve yourself where you can, you make that work, and then you diversify and go where you're not yet established, step by step.
Excellent. Just want to remind everybody, we have about 5 minutes. I mean, I have lots of questions and I could keep going all night with these panelists. I think this is a great conversation, but in order to keep people still active, I just want to remind everybody to write some questions. We only have a couple that's been put in up so far, so I'll give you guys a few more minutes. So Lisa, we talked about the branding and some of the objectives that the companies need to be focused on, some of the pitfalls. My biggest thing, and we mentioned this, like new genetics and stuff, like, is continual development of new product absolutely necessary? Or is quality and consistency enough? Are we going to get to, I can bottled Coors Light and it's my product that's got its market? Or is the race for new product, new genetics, or new whatever, let's call it new products, because depending on the company.
I think there's two different kind of streams there. You have this, search for exotics, which I think, JV and Lot420 are nailing, getting new genetics. I love all the stuff that you're running from Alien Lab, Stefan. Huge fan of the white truffle. But there's also, staples out there that are tried, tested, and true. A great example of that, another CANNA client, I believe, is Montreal Sage and Sour. Absolute staple in the legacy market. They've completely dominated across Canada. So, you have like the steam whistles of the world where there's like one strain and people absolutely have to have it on their menu, be that Pink Kush or Sage and Sour. But really, there is strain fatigue is very real. The provincial control boards are aware of it. So, you might have a hit, but unless you maintain that consistency, you're not really going to see that rebuy in market. So maintaining consistency is really important. But you're seeing producers, who are struggling economically. So being able to afford nutrients, being able to even afford substrate is a challenge for a lot of these small companies to maintain their quality. But yeah, I think you can see both. And there's a lot of producers out there that are just like focused on one strain. I would really suggest diversifying. Like Janine said, think 6 months in advance. It's not about what's popular right now. We went through a phase of a lot of grapes, then it went to banana. So think about what's popular in 6 months. I think cannabis is really similar to fashion. I compare it to sneakers. If you have a really nice sneaker and you drop, a limited launch, that's going to create a lot of hype. People are going to line up to buy your product. So we've been experimenting with that with BC Direct Delivery, with Herbal Dispatch. We've been dropping small lots, sometimes 3 to 5 kilos. We'll sell out of those lots. We're doing like weekly new releases, and people are clamoring to also not only buy the new, US exotic strains that you see, coming out of California, Oregon, Colorado. They're also looking to buy classic BC bud. They miss the pre-98 Bubba. They miss the Hindu Kush. They miss the original Blueberry by DJ Short. So I think that we're seeing the trends kind of go back to the old school again, where people are looking not just for those exotic US genetics, but also for the tried, tested, and true Canadian genetics. So really excited to see a lot of new producers coming online. While there are micros closing their doors, there's also micros opening and declaring genetics. We're really excited to be working with the folks formerly known as Ancestral Seeds, Weathered Islands. A lot of those BC outdoor genetics, they're super famous out there. Purple Papaya, Durban Poison, Apricot Kush were legacy genetics from the Vancouver Seed Bank that they were selling. They were the top selling seed company in the Vancouver Seed Bank, and now those seeds are finally available in the legal market. So it's really exciting to see a lot of BC outdoor traditional growers who are, second generation growers, finally getting their micro, declaring their genetics, and having those like classic BC genetics that the market is craving coming back into style. So really excited to see what happens in the next 6 months.
Excellent. Thank you. So quality, consistency, that's kind of, we can all agree that that's should be in any production facility or any kind of production, whether it's cannabis or widgets. But what I found really interesting is the importance of coming out with your brand and really knocking it out of the park and being strategic about it. Kind of, we didn't really talk about it, but pushing the boundaries as much as you can around the Health Canada regulation about promotion and all that stuff is so you mentioned some Instagram. There's actually one question that came in. I think it's been answered now, but do you feel that platforms like Instagram are a way for LPs to market their products where they would normally be restricted by Health Canada? So kind of how far can we push the boundary and where can we communicate these things? I'll throw it to Lisa first because it's got to do with branding, but I'd like to Stefan to chime in on that quickly too because you mentioned Instagram.
Sorry, I missed that. Can you repeat it, Nico?
Oh, sorry. Do you feel that a platform like Instagram is a way for LPs to market their product where they would normally be restricted by Health Canada? So kind of pushing the envelope on where can you communicate? Like, is this a good idea? I think you answered that shortly, but can you expand maybe for Chris?
For sure. I think Instagram, like I said before, has its pros and its cons. Personally, I've had like several personal Instagram pages deleted. So personally, I am quitting Instagram. I'm done with it. You can find me on Twitter. That being said, I think it is a really great opportunity to engage directly, business to business. When you're communicating business to business as a sales agency and you're communicating to retailers, you can break the traditional boundaries of the Cannabis Act, those restrictions on marketing to consumers, and do really, really fun stuff. So that's my favorite hack of the Cannabis Act, whether it's on Instagram or in a private event or in someone's DMs. You're not restricted to, no recreation, vitality, excitement. You can do whatever you want when it's business to business. So I think for Instagram, a lot of brands are focused on B2C. So for us at Mercari, we're really focused on B2B marketing. And that's like a really fun loophole for brands to explore is not just marketing to the consumer, but marketing to bud tenders and to stores as well.
Great. So a couple of different avenues there for the folks. Stefan, you want to add to that? You mentioned you had kind of started your brand prior to even getting your product out there. Are there any ideas or good points for our listeners?
Yeah, no, I agree with Lisa. Like, you gotta be very careful what you do on Instagram. We've had ours deleted two, three times. Get yourself a backup. I think we just feel that it's probably still the best. Like, we've gone on all the other platforms. Like, you've got the Twitter accounts, you've got Burner had his social club going there, Facebook's and all that. Facebook's a different crowd. It's not bad. Facebook also, they don't ban you as much either. Not, but it's like a different older crowd, let's say, but it still remains like Instagram's the coolest thing, I guess, and that's what people want to see. That's what people are on their phones all the time. So for us, it's like, we don't put an enormous amount of effort to it, but we do put some effort into it and try to like keep it nice. And what I meant from before was like, you know, we kind of started a brand before our brand came out, so we just kind of tried to garner some followers and like garner our own community before we came out with the product. And when we did come out with the product, well, the community that we had kind of built really helped us push. I mean, we had other people, other influencers who were associated to our brand as well, who helped us push things. That could be an idea as well. But like, we feel that like it's a great tool to use to help push your product. Now, all the Health Canada question, where can you get around things? I don't know if you can really get around things. You have to be careful what you're doing on Instagram, anyways. So like, just be cautious of what you're doing and what you're saying. But generally, if you focus on like showing your facility, your growing methods, and like how you're producing and what you're doing, then that's usually acceptable.
Excellent. Thanks, Stefan. Um, So kind of I just got a new question. It's kind of a continuation of that. So what is the best way for online marketing with the actual regulation? So I assume what's my safest way, or right, like without pushing the envelope, without getting kicked off of Instagram. What are the avenues that is under the cannabis regulation? Is it just your website and hopefully you get people to land on your website? Janine, like you guys have to have a busy website for people. How does that work on that aspect? Is it mostly done through social media or the more
No,
regulated
like
method?
weed's not sold on social media. Like it's a great way to, build brand awareness, but it's certainly not how you sell weed. And I always think it's interesting when people conflate the two. Sales happen talking to retailers. Like the truth is, any LP, any processor, any whoever, we're selling B2B. We are not selling B2C. Where we can communicate B2C is on Instagram, sure, but you have to be very careful. I mean, flat out in the TOS on Instagram, it says sale of regulated goods is banned, right? It's a regulated good. So um, it's just like anything. Like I think somebody had recently said, I don't know if there's any truth to this, that they had trained the algorithm on Cannabis Wiki and it was highlighting, like it was banning anything that had certain strain names. We've certainly seen that we would put a strain name in a post and it would be taken down 2 seconds after it was posted. So really you could communicate who you are, what you do, but when you're trying to communicate around your product, it's pretty difficult.
Yeah, I agree with
I'm
that.
following a
There's
trend, and correct me if I'm wrong. So we talked a lot about the branding and how to get your voice out there. It sounds like you need to have that kind of person on your team. And if you don't have that person on your team, you need to be speaking to somebody like so, because I'm just thinking, I start a brand new thing. I'm a grower. I can grow excellent cannabis. I know nothing personally. I know nothing about how to put a brand together and all that. So really, I would absolutely need a person like Lisa or Janine and Stefan. I don't know if you have somebody on your team that's like that, but I assume somebody's taking on that role. Am I seeing all nods of heads here? Like the importance of having this role, this marketing, branding, going to B2B and selling your product, like you said, Janine. And then Lisa, you mentioned sampling. So again, that's that person pushing that communication through. Am I correct?
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with
I see
Janine
some
though, especially that sales aren't made on Instagram. I think, there's a lot of brands that think that just by having a social media presence that your brand is going to fly. Yes, your brand needs to be hype in the market. There needs to be consumer demand for it. But you need to be able to build that offline because Instagram is far too unstable to be able to really use that as a sales strategy. It just takes one of your competitors reporting all of your weed photos to take your account down in 1 week. So that makes a lot of brands really vulnerable if they're overly reliant on Instagram. So I know I've been taken down, many brands and retailers have been taken down in the last week. So I don't even think it's people reporting at this point. I think it's just the algorithm. And it's really easy to get caught up on Instagram, be focused on, oh my God, how many likes did my post get? But really, if you're spending that time on Instagram on sales calls, your brand is going to be that much more successful.
excellent. So another question from the Q&A. Oh, this is a great one. I don't know if it would be which one of you wants to take it, but what's the most efficient way for a producer to get the listing into the OCS? Would a contract farming agreement? Yeah, big question, eh? How's that? And I'm going to put another bullet in this one. So, what's the most efficient way to get a listing on OCS? And would a contract farming agreement with a licensed producer be enough? Lisa, you had the biggest expression, so
Yeah, I
maybe
can
you
respond to that.
first.
I mean, the best way to get a SKU on OCS is to submit. It's to book a meeting with the category manager. And absolutely, you need to know what product you're submitting. You need to have you need to be 100% certain that that cannabis is high quality, that it's tried, tested, and true, and then it's going to meet spec. Because even if you have a contract farming agreement, if that farmer doesn't meet spec, you are going to fail to deliver and you will lose that revenue. And it's a huge waste of time for all parties. So we've been in that position where we've submitted a SKU where we had, it was still in veg. And once it got tested, it did not meet spec. And it was all kinds of problems to find a way to bring that product to market. So really make sure that, if you do have contract agreements, that A, your genetics are tried, tested, and true, and B, that your growers are some of the top growers in this industry. Because like Janine said, it's agriculture. Anything can happen. You can get PM, you can get bugs, you can have a tired mom that produces low THC. So there's a lot of risk coming to market in Ontario just with that 6-month timeline and not knowing what you're going to get once that comes into flower.
Excellent. Wow. Okay. Thank you. So again, we talked about consistency there. So knowing what your product is so that you actually produce consistently what you're saying it is. So you land in that segment. So we talked about a lot of things that happen wrong and losing a crop or not meeting that spec. Another question from the audience. Let's say everything is really good and you submit a SKU for review and you actually test over in THC or terpenes for that SKU you applied for. Is that going to be rejected? Because we know that if you don't and you're below, you kind of don't make the mark. So does it happen even?
No.
Like, this is a question from the audience here.
You just up your range with the province. That's all you do. You send in a request to change your range to the distributor. There's I believe in Ontario, that's done via your category manager. In BC, that's done through an online form, and you CC the category manager for approval.
Okay. So it's better to be higher than lower of what you put in for your segment. Hopefully that happens. Okay. One last question. I think we still have time. Does it make sense to get a processing license instead of using a third-party packager? So sorry, Janine, this is not a hit on your company, but there is a point where size matter, maybe. So does this make sense that at some point you decide to not use a co-packager because of size? And what does this size look like? Do you want to take that, Janine?
Well, I mean, honestly, when I see people graduate from our supply chain and get their own in-house processing, I see us as a beautiful launching pad for these cultivators and those that have done well establishing consistent quality and presence in the market that are able to graduate towards getting their own processing license and having a path to their market on their own. I'm absolutely extremely proud of them and support them with every blessing I have. And we've had a few that have been able to achieve this. And it's just, to me, that's just proving the success of the relationship. So I think 100% some people have what it takes. But that being said, while some people have what it takes, some people have never been able to do a compliant lot transfer with all the paperwork in place without us chasing documentation simply on transferring a wholesale lot in a 3-year period. So some people don't have what it takes, right? So it really is about how well you know the business. And I think cultivators don't understand. A lot of the time there's 180 steps in processing that they're unaware of and compliance pieces that they're not aware of that come after they deliver a wholesale lot to a processor. So getting intimate with what that process is.
Excellent. So we have a couple of extra questions here, but this would be opening up a can of worms, in my opinion. We will have other sessions. There's questions from it's really interesting about international markets, but I believe this will open up conversation on GMP, GACP, and the complexities of that. But without getting too far into the other countries' regulations and all that, should we be considering international markets? Is this something that Canadians should be looking at? I have my own opinions on that, but I'd like to maybe go through, because I think that's an important question. People are looking for new markets and different ways to move their product. Everybody's hearing about much larger dollars across the pond. So is this something that we should be looking at? Stefan, I'll start with you. Should we be looking at international market? Is this something that's in interest of you?
Well, yeah, like I mentioned before, I would diversify as most as I can, and definitely I would be looking at international markets. Try to set up abroad is, taking. It depends how you want to do it, but like for us, it's providing our sorry bringing our brand to other markets is very important. So yeah, we've been working on this. We're working on it right now, and I think it's important for any kind of cannabis licensed producer to try to do it. There's a whole bunch of ways that you can do it. There's partners you can have who can help you do the get the different kind of licensing necessary, etc. You can get those licensing yourself. So yeah, I would definitely look into international markets 100%.
So, okay, so different countries, different regulations, and then different ways to go about it as well. So, kind of third party partnerships and or different licensing or certification internally. Janine, on the processing and packaging side of things, is this something that you guys have an avenue, an international market? Is this something that a company like yours would be looking at?
We're looking at it as a possibility in the future. Right now, we're kind of looking to see what happens with it all and where the cards may fall. Um, it was as early as today. I had an upset cultivator contact me because they were promised something like $4 a gram, and in reality, it was $1.79 a gram they were going to get. So I think there's a lot of going to be a lot of failed export deals, and we're really going to want to see who the players are that we can trust. One of the things that I'm personally concerned about, having seen the landscape in 2018 and 2019, where a lot of pubcos raised money and then tried to bring things to market, is maybe some of the importers maybe trying to get contracts in place simply to raise money around their business, and they actually don't have a viable path to market, and we're going to see a lot of packs held back from the Canada market, and then failed export deals, and then they're selling at below their cost to produce. So we're just kind of watching to see where the cards may fall.
Very, very interesting. I have some stories as well, some positive, but some negative, and it's always the little person that does not win in these kind of battles. So yeah, so still very high risk, very interesting points there, and I would have to agree with you 100%. A little bit high risky, but it's just like the stock market, right? High risk, high returns. Isn't that how that works? But I agree with you, Janine, and I think at some point we need to. It's going to evolve. Like you said, the pubcos are doing what they did 4 years ago here, and yes, I totally agree. I think it's going to evolve to a point where we're going to have some sort of, I say this lightly, grading, supply agreements that are a little bit more rigorous, even though it's a horticulture crop. Um, there's things that need to be addressed in our industry. If there's a failure rate, you put that in your equation to be able to still meet your. There's things that other production are able to do. But yes, in short, right now, a little bit risky. Have some good partners, is what you're saying, if it happens. Uh, Lisa, on how does branding and marketing fit into the international market? Are we able to just kind of take our brands from here and keep that rolling over there, or are there any kind of hurdles, different things to do from that?
Well, we're seeing a lot of Canadian branded products go abroad, especially to Israel. That seems like a really fun market. The marketing restrictions, of course, aren't the same as they are in Canada, so you can have more fun on the labels and also, how you can market your product. You're not restricted to the Cannabis Act in Canada. We work with one international brand, which is Itopia Life in Jamaica. So we're able to bring their brand Itopian to the Canadian market. And in Jamaica, of course, there's no regulations for their product. So we're not doing an import or an export. We're just bringing the brand over, and we're maintaining the original brand of Itopia Life separate from Itopian to be able to have all the amazing branding that they're doing in Jamaica kind of reflect on the Canadian market as a sister brand. So it's been really fun. Itopia Life, which is based in Kingston, Jamaica, it's an herb house. They've had over 16 music videos shot there over the last 4 years. So I think you can be really creative in taking brands across the pond or even south to be able to do more creative marketing than you can do here in Canada.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. I think we've gone around all the questions. So thank you very much, everybody. This is our time. Thank you, everyone who attended, and our great panelists, Lisa, Janine, and Stefan, and Canna for organizing the CANNAtalk events like these to continue the growing conversation. So we want this to be interactive. And so there's ways to communicate with the Canna folks and CANNAtalk for topics, ideas, speakers, industry leaders. We're very, very much interested in keeping these types of conversation going. I think we have a great topic about GMP, GACP, how to move product outside of Canada. That could be a very good conversation for later. The next event that will be in person in May at the Grow Up Conference in Alberta, where we'll have a roundtable discussion at the infamous Growers Luncheon. So we'll tackle some new topics, have new people around, and hopefully some topics from you, the audience. So to participate at the Growers Luncheon, head over to the Grow Up Expo and Conference website to purchase a ticket. So that's for the Growers Luncheon. And remember, everyone, to subscribe to the Canna newsletter on their website at canna.ca/CANNAtalk. And this is to stay updated on all our new talks and events. And I thank everybody and have a great night to all. Thank you, panelists, once again.